Mr. Minister, welcome to the stage of Unbound. We agreed that I will allow to ask you moderately embarrassing questions, not too tough, but, or we didn't agree?
We did.
We did, okay. So let me start with the following question. You know what are the three biggest lies? The check is in the mail. There is another one which I'm not going here, and the third one is, I'm here from the government, I came to help.
Yes.
Please.
The 7 most dangerous words in the English language, as Ronald Reagan called them. The truth is that if what we're trying to do is make the UK a brilliant place to start and build a digital business, and I think that that should be our goal, then we've all got a part to play. And I came from a tech business before I went into politics, so I understand the limitations to the support from government. But I also understand that, by God, we can't do it without government, whether that's on infrastructure or on skills or the overall environment. So there's things that we've got to do, but we've also got to be careful that we know where our limits are and where we leave it to others to come up with the brilliant ideas.
So what is the current role and policy of the UK government in the digital space?
Well, we've set out in our digital strategy, all with this goal of making the UK the best place in the world to start and grow a digital business. That's our goal. There's a debate at the moment about where we're up to. There was research out last week showing that London is clearly the European city at the lead in that, but I know that some of our close friends and neighbours are also having a crack at that title. To get it right, we've got to make sure that we get the infrastructure right, the nuts and bolts, both this generation of technology and also 5G and full fibre technology. We've got to get the skills and talent piece right, which is pretty acute at the moment, and there are clear challenges. We've got to make sure that the regulatory environment is right. In particular, data rules are sensible, and maybe we can talk about that, and there's progress that we need to make there. And also that the cybersecurity environment is as strong as possible. And finally, in terms of international reach and exports, making sure that we're connected with other fast-growing places in the world. Ultimately, tech talent and particularly tech investment is a global question, and you've got to make sure that we're connected to the rest of the world to deliver that.
Yeah. As a friendly observer on Europe, I definitely agree that I don't know if London is number 1 or number 2. But if you mention the hubs in Europe, London comes very early at the top of the list. But together with places like Berlin, Barcelona, few other digital/creative places. You told me before the meeting that you are not only responsible for the digital space, but also for the creative sector, which is, I think it's a very smart combination because these two things are going together. Can you tell us a little bit what the government policy and ambitions in the creative space?
Well, yes. I mean, in a way, it's similar. I think you're completely right that you've got to get the creative industries broadly defined, motoring as well, because people want to live in the sorts of places that have strong creative industries, a strong cultural offer. Here in the UK, the music and film industries, for instance, are going very strongly. And that helps because people are looking for quality of life as well as the sort of harder end of the infrastructure and what have you. So that really matters. And there again, it's about making sure that we're engaged in the whole world. And when we come to some of the big policy challenges that we've got, like making sure that we navigate to a good Brexit deal.
There is a good Brexit deal?
There's potential for a good Brexit deal. That's what we want to deliver, yeah. But we've got to remember that both, whether it's in the creative industries or in digital, ultimately we're playing in a global market. And at the moment, we have, for instance, talent from around the world in London. Some of that, yes, from Europe. But I think sometimes the debate on free movement forgets the fact that there is an awful lot of the brightest and the best from all the way around the world. And we're very clear that we want to keep the brightest and the best coming to London and to the whole of the UK.
So in a Brexit environment, you will facilitate visa for the creative class, or how you are going to resolve this very critical issue of having diversity of ideas, of backgrounds, of cultures, etc.
Yeah, it really matters to get this right. We've expanded the tech visa system that Tech City runs. In fact, we expanded that in the last few months. So there has been a small amount of movement that demonstrates that we're open for the brightest and best. But clearly, this is part of a big negotiation, and we've got to get the negotiation as a whole right as well. Yes, it's about talent. It's also about rules around, for instance, data flows and the free flow of data. We want to see unhindered flows of data to the rest of the EU as now, and also to other key markets like the United States, where there are strong privacy rules, and getting that right in the negotiation is important too. And in fact, we're legislating here. We'll have a new new data protection bill coming in front of Parliament in the autumn, in order to make sure that our rules here are updated, and to make sure that we're prepared for Brexit to have a good deal on getting unhindered flow of data.
Now, while the Europeans are very busy with internal European issues, Brexit, debts, all kinds of things which consume a lot of energy and a lot of regulation and a lot of negotiations, but their net effect on the GDP and on the development of the industry, I don't think is very high. Things are taking a totally different shape in the Far East, in China, in other Southeast Asia countries. They are kind of running on their own pace without paying attention to what's going on in Europe. We heard that Alibaba sold in 11 of November last year $16.4 billion in one day. And Alipay is doing like 170,000 transactions per second. Where all of it leaves Europe?
Well, clearly it's a global market, isn't it? And that demonstrates, the statistic you just gave demonstrates that even more. And so making sure that we look out to the world is a critical part of getting this right for the tech sector here in the UK. I completely agree. So whether that's through trade deals with the rest of the world, some places we have those in place through the EU, but not as many as we'd like, or whether that is through an open view and a sort of progressive and open view of Britain's place. Ultimately, Britain has been at her most successful when we've been open and outward-looking to the world and welcoming of new ideas, and that's where we've got to make sure that we stay.
So you see London continue to be kind of hub of creativity and attraction to talented people from all over the world?
Yeah, unambiguously, yes. It's very important that we do that, and so that's why one of the reasons why getting this deal right is so important. It's not just about London. Actually, the growth of some of the other hubs around the UK is going very strongly at the moment. We've got to keep that moving in the right direction. But ultimately, we have a lead in some of the best new technologies, whether that's in fintech, our talent and capability in AI across the piece is pretty strong. And a huge amount of that is without government effort. And that's fantastic. But of course, there's a role for government in making sure that we can keep it that way. And we're extremely keen to do that.
when I was a kid, and there was some time when I was a kid, we used to say, I was always interested in technology. And we used to say this, I'm now talking about the 60s, the 70s. We used to say the Britons invent it, the Americans invent the technology, and the Japanese are manufacturing it. This was in the time of consumer goods, consumer electronics,
Yeah.
et cetera. How do you see this equation in the 21st century?
I think that's really changed. So when I was growing up, and I grew up in a family tech company, and there was this idea that we were these great inventors, and then the Americans would go and commercialize something. I think that's changed over a generation. And the interaction between the British academic environment and British R&D, whether that's done in a startup, in a corporate, or in an academic environment, and then the commercialization has just changed beyond recognition over 20 years. Probably starting at Cambridge, but now with all of the main universities heavily engaged in the commercial use of IP, many, many more structures for teaching people who are ultimately come at this from a scientific start point, how to turn that into a successful business, with both over a generation, the financial support, the VC funds, and right down to the angels to come in and finance that, with, of course, the mentoring and the support as well as the finance. And then now the second generation, as we're having some enormous exits in the UK, which itself then allows reinvestment back into the start. This happened over a generation before in the Valley, and we're now just getting into the second generation of this in the UK. It's hugely exciting. It's much, much better. There's a role for government here. A lot of the big US funds started with government help. America is seen as this great pure capitalism, but actually a lot of the big US funds started with often state government help. So long as we structure it right and don't try to smother every good idea with the blessing and support of government, which can sometimes be something of a problem, we can get this right. Now, I'm not saying it's fixed, but we've made a load of progress in understanding how to engender that ecosystem and make sure that the ecosystem then is bootstraps and reinforces itself.
Yeah, I think that when you look at the UK from a bird's eye view, you see that the UK had at least two major things in this ecosystem. Number one, the first choice of a VC company to go outside of United States was always London, or for most of them. We saw Index and Excel and many other started their first offshore United States in London. The other thing is, if you look of the highest concentration of EMEA vice president in big companies which are in charge of Europe, Africa and the Middle East, London was the first choice, and there is really a huge concentration of these companies. Two questions. Number one, are you, as government, trying to bank on these two communities? And number two, how do you think Brexit will change or will not change this selection?
Number one, yes. And number two, part of getting a good deal is making sure that we are in a position to have good trade and engagement with the rest of the EU after exit, and that we are increasingly open to the rest of the world. And that is, and I think delivering on those two is both doable and is certainly our aim.
And what can you brief us what's going on now in Cambridge as far as science-based industry and technology industry?
Well, in Cambridge, which is close to my heart because it's close to where I live and represent in West Suffolk, there's the cluster there is going gangbusters. I mean, it's growing incredibly quickly. They've had a series of very good exits recently, and a lot of that is coming back into the sector. But the interesting thing is, it's no longer the only place. You know, there'll be people here in the room who know far better than I do to a great level of detail all of the different ideas that are coming out of these, you know, this pyramid between academia, the startup community, and where necessary, government. It is something that we can get right and have the opportunity to really deliver on. If you take, for instance, in the cyberspace, in cybersecurity space.
Let's take, for instance, the cybersecurity space.
Okay, so here we're learning from Israel, in fact, where in Beersheba there's a brilliant cluster that brings together Ben Gurion University.
You know too much.
The IDF and who are experts, and a load of startups and corporates, all in one place where people can physically walk from one to the other. We're replicating that in London and in Cheltenham, where the government has quite a big footprint. But the government itself, you know, traditionally GCHQ has been, you know, it was built as a donut for a reason with the windows on the inside. But to get the best innovation, they increasingly need to be engaging outside, and whether that's people who have been trained there and have left, or others. And this getting the interaction there between the agencies and the and academia and the startups has been is really fruitful and really bearing fruit in terms of being able to deliver both great growth and some really exciting opportunities, but also better solutions for us to keep people safe online. So that's a good example of where it all works.
So I think UK is known for the fintech industry. I think you are really very well known. How do you see the cyber security industry developing in the UK?
Well, one of the things that that's happened that I never thought would happen in the fintech industry is that I get people coming up to me and saying, you know, the FCA, the main regulator, they're doing a great job, and they really help me in coming up with an innovative idea. Now, my natural skepticism means that I am always surprised when somebody says this, but the regulatory sandbox approach that the FCA has taken, where they essentially say, with a fintech idea, you go with it, let us know how it's going, and we will think about the consequences and how we might structure regulation around it dynamically afterwards. That's been very successful. In fact, the Information Commissioner was talking about a regulatory sandbox in terms of big data, AI, and machine learning approaches, and whether they can take a similar view. And now what we're trying to do in terms of cyber innovation is similarly make sure that the government approach is much more permissive and much more open to new ideas. And then, you know, we think, you know, of course, you know, different parts of government have got a job to do. The financial regulator to make sure we have a stable financial system, the Information Commissioner to ensure privacy is respected, and the agencies to protect the UK in terms of cybersecurity. So they've got a job to do, but let's be innovative and dynamic in terms of how we think about it from a government side, and therefore work much more closely with startups. We try to do the same in GovTech as well, in some areas really successfully, and some of our services have moved online really well. In some areas, how should I put it, there's still some work to do.
Now, another thing which started in the UK in this space is impact investments. I think that Sir Ronald Cohen had the first attempt and really opened up a whole new industry, and he was able to do it because the government, the UK government, agreed to play a role of a customer for his rehabilitation of prisoners. I think that was the genesis of this industry, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Any thought about impact investments and the role of it on the work of government, private sector?
Yeah. So the social impact bonds have been now been rolled out over a number of different areas of government. Not least, so from rehabilitation, also in terms of getting people into work, It's a really interesting way of bringing private capital to bear on long-standing social issues. And where is the biggest market in the world for this? It's here in London.
Yeah, that's good. Now, I am a foreign investor, or I'm a foreign entrepreneur.
You're very welcome here.
Yeah, I want to know why. By the way, you know what is the definition of entrepreneur?
I think it's... President Macron might point out that it's a French word.
Yeah, it's a French word, but actually it's a Jewish word, and this is how Jewish mother call her unemployed son. So let's assume I'm entrepreneur. Can you give me the pitch why I should come to London?
Yeah, we've got, firstly, if you want to live somewhere that is one of the most exciting cities on Earth, located within one of the most beautiful countries on Earth, then of course you need to be in London. We've got an amazing array of talent that is both wide in terms of the breadth of people you may need and deep in terms of the numbers. We have global links that are in many cases very rich and deep. And we have an approach to doing business which is fair with the English language and the English law, and we have a government that is forward-looking, open to change, tries to take a light-touch regulatory approach. We have a strong financial system so you can get the finances, and in the evening, any night of the year, you can go to a great production at the theatre and enjoy yourself too.
I want to tell you in that respect that I was yesterday in American in Paris. I don't know why London, you know, American and Paris, but it was such an enjoyable experience, you know. It was such a wonderful way they presented the show and the dancers and the ballet. It was really a great evening.
And I think on the back of that, you should make further investments in the UK so you can spend more time here.
How about treatment of foreign investors?
Well, we are, as you know, incredibly open to foreign investment, and we've always taken that approach. Because we think that what matters is where the activity is, that underpins the approach we have, and it's why we have such deep and liquid markets. Is because
what about tax regime?
Well, the tax regime is incredibly attractive. God, this is going well.
Who think the tax regime is very attractive? Raise your hand. Never mind, raise your hand to make the minister happy. You know, he came all the way from his office. Raise your hand.
There you go. So people, you know, I can understand why people would always want the tax regime to be yet more attractive, but they
want negative tax. They want that you will pay them, you know.
Well, in some areas we do have, you know, the R&D tax credits are essentially a negative tax. So, you know, your wish is my command.
And you mentioned that you came from the from a tech background. Can you share with us a little bit?
Yes. So, if you type your postcode into the internet, if you're in the UK, and it brings up your address, we wrote that software. And
really?
So my first
the DNS of.
Yeah, it was my parents started the business. My first job was decoding Y2K bugs in COBOL, and then
COBOL. You don't look like.
Yeah, I'm aging pretty quickly. This
is because of the job.
Certainly. The next, and in fact, the next job I had was writing the instruction book. So my job was to translate from tech speak into plain English, and I've been essentially in the same job ever since. So embarrassingly, considering that I'm the Minister for Digital, I'm the only one of my siblings who hasn't myself started a business. But that was how I grew up, and then I ended up at the Bank of England, and I studied economics, and then I realized that all the big decisions are taken in Westminster.
Okay,
and that threw me into Westminster, and now it's great to be in a job where I can really try to improve the environment for the people, from those from whence I came.
And can I ask you another personal question?
I haven't got much choice.
Do you see yourself leaving your current prestigious job in this very attractive space, which is really very attractive, as all of us here see, and considering open a startup? And if the answer yes, is where?
Only if I'm forced to. No, I love it. I love doing this job. It's highly, it's very mission driven, like many tech businesses. It's highly mission driven. We've got a very clear set of goals, and we want to make that happen. And I love doing it, and I love the people, and there's an awful lot to do.
Yeah, and I would like to conclude this really very interesting talk with one personal comment. I am trying, since my job is to use every illegitimate trick to entertain the audience, I started with my question about the three big lies. But I'm in this business for ages, and I can assure you and the audience that there is not a single place on earth, including Israel and any other successful hub, where a very strong and cohesive government-private sector relation exists. The good coordination between government and private sector is mandatory for the success of this business for many reasons: regulation, taxes, encouragement, policy, opening the government data, opening the government market, etc., etc. And though I'm not familiar, exactly with the situation in the UK, the fact that the UK, London, is such a successful hub, it's definitely testimonial that the government is able, in spite of all what we would like to believe, doing something very right. So thank you.
Well, let me just leave you with one reflection, which is that there's a secret to getting that right. And having come from the tech industry into government, the thing that I brought with me and the thing that I've learned in government is that if we try to improve the environment for starting and growing a tech business by doing the things that we think are sensible, then we may get a couple of things right, but we'll generally miss the big ideas. And the secret to getting it right is listening and genuinely asking people, what are the things that we need to do to make it easier for you to grow your business? And that simple question I ask all the time, because that's where you get the ideas. And then my job is to go and knock down the doors of government and try to turn that into policy. And it's only if you actually actively listen to what the answers to that question are that you can get the answers right. Because we've got a brilliant team inside government on tech policy now, but even with our brilliance and innovation, it's the brilliance and innovation of my team. I was meaning, not me. It is only by crowdsourcing the ideas.
So are you
right that you can get it? You can get there.